Ho, ho, ho! Merry Christmas, guys. Happy holidays, happy Honda days, whatever you celebrate. We're going to continue where we left off in the last video with pulling the automatic transmission out of the Nissan R34 Impala. And yes, that was my neighbor's festivities. I saw quite a few comments disappointed in the abuse of the automatic transmission. I do want to mention that if anyone did want to use this transmission for their build, I would not have tried to blow it up and abuse it. The fact of the matter is, no one's putting automatic transmissions back into their Skyline. The rule of thumb is, once it comes out, it's not going back in. Slapping it into reverse and drive was not meant to offend anyone. I've just never really had an automatic car other than the Nissan Gloria, and obviously I'm not going to really abuse this thing. It's perfect. It was fun to just let my intrusive thoughts win and smash through the gears. But alright, let's get this manual swap going. We got that road trip coming up soon. We got to convert this pull type to a push type. I've never done this before, so it's gonna be a learning process.
Oh, for the release.
Christmas came early.
The freshie.
Yeah, it's so clean.
Brand new.
Whoa, that's crazy. Factory? The starter cut out there?
This has never seen one clutch kick in its life.
0 clutch kicks. Look at all like the safety checks.
That is cool.
That is neat. They put a lot of color on it too.
This is the cleanest you'll ever see it, so admire it.
Oh, look at that sticker. That's weird. Do you take this tag off?
Yeah.
Is that for like warranty or something? Oh, I guess we can reuse that breather that's still on the car.
Yeah.
That's what this is for. I guess we can finally open these. Now I got this kit from Injuku. They sell all of these parts together so you can convert this trans so you don't have to like buy them all separately. It's a lot easier to find. You know, I've never seen one of these in action. It looks like the slave would go on this side of the trans. And then it pushes. Yeah, see? Pull type.
That's weird.
Isn't that weird? Like, it's a good setup, but the clutches are so expensive. Like, more than double, I've noticed. Maybe I'm just looking in the wrong places, but we have a push style clutch, so that's what we're gonna use.
It feels buttery smooth though.
Can't believe they still sell this piece. So this is from an R33 RB25 transmission because they didn't have pull type. Looks like that'll just go on there. It's got a seal in there too. Good to know. And that's what this gasket's for. Oh, look at this. It's just held in by a pin. Okay.
Oh, look at it. Oh, it slowly filled out.
Damn, that's a beefy pin. Okay, I'm assuming this. Oh, there's a washer in there. Good to know. Wow, look at the difference.
Yellow grease.
Japan. Oh, this part spins. Yeah, I guess the boot is different, maybe?
Dude, everything's just coming right now.
It's so fresh. Okay, the boots are different.
This one's way heavier.
Yeah, it is. That's good. Evenly. So we got all the bolts out. We noticed the bottom 3 were a different color, and these bottom 3 also had Loctite. Orange, by the way. And we're ready to pull this guy off. Whoa.
Whoa.
Oh, there was fluid back there. Yeah, that's gotta be why there's...
bearing.
Wow,
It's gotta be.
beefy. Looks robust.
Those are very beefy.
It's interesting. Do you think the gasket's actually a different shape? Or they just supplied a new gasket because you should replace it?
I would replace it just because how long the input shaft looks like without all that shit on there.
Yeah. Dang, well I'm gonna have to clean all this up now. Can't put a gasket on oil, you know?
Right.
So it looks like these gaskets are identical, so we're gonna go ahead and reinstall it. We cleaned up our mounting surfaces. Make sure this is clean. Should be. Let's fresh out the package.
I want to put a little ATF on the rubber seal.
Oh, and we gotta redo the sealant there. I don't know if that's supposed to be red. I'm assuming blue, so we're gonna use some blue Loctite in the bottom 3 bolts. Alright, we got all the bolts on here, nice and torqued down. Put the Loctite on. Now we're on the next stage here. Got these parts laid out. Got to figure out how the fork attaches with these springs that attach the throw bearing, and then this is the sleeve that the fork rides on. Now we are going to have to press this bearing onto this machined face here. So that'll be fun to do. And we'll grease up all of our points, slide this on, which will then bring us to, I think, one of the most challenging pieces of this puzzle, and that is the slave cylinder. The pull type slave bolts right here. The push type should bolt right here, but I don't know why they don't, you know, make threaded holes in the machining process, but you can see where it lines up here. So that'll be fun to figure out. But I figured we should just do this part first. Alright, so I may or may not have broken a vital piece while trying to convert this. So we're gonna have to come back to that. Ordered some parts. But we got Maddox over here assembling the clutch pedal because, like we said before, they don't come assembled for some reason.
Legos for adults.
I love it. It's cool it's all labeled too. They didn't just throw it on a bag and say good luck.
That's what I was gonna use a marker for. I was gonna look at the part, write the number.
It's nice that they coated it because, you know, a lot of S chassis parts, they're just raw metal and they're just rusty and crusty. So what I'm doing now is trying to determine what bit I want to use to drill the hole in the firewall. Got my dial indicator here, measured the diameter here, because this is where the master cylinder is going to go through the firewall. So we take our step bit, see how far up we need to go while drilling. Looks like all the way up to second to last. That's good to know, because you don't want to do it too much, and then you save time from doing too little. Looks like this pedal is honestly done. That was fast. All right, it's gonna be kind of crammed in here, but I'm gonna do my best to show my thought process. I used some HVAC tape here to tape off the area where we're gonna be drilling because I don't want any of the metal flakes to be falling in between this sound deadening shield and the firewall, because that's just gonna be inviting rust. So you can clearly see the hole, and hopefully all the flakes are gonna either be caught in that little ridge or fall all the way down here where I can vacuum them up. Alright, I'm really pleased with how that came out. Really hard to get to. You can see all the shards. Hopefully made it all to the bottom here. Alright, now we gotta cut out this sound deadening hole. We can see our mouse hole that we've made here. Unfortunately, they don't have the nice provisions like they did on the interior. We're about to spray some, I guess not spray. We're gonna apply this extreme chassis black gloss finish. It's a good like undercoating, I guess you can say. I'm gonna use this Q-tip here to spread it just along any bare metal area there. Just gonna spray this can onto this bag. Hopefully that didn't get on my lens. Get a nice dollop. Oh, yeah.
Or put too much on there, you have a little too much horsepower.
There we go. I know it's blurry, I'm sorry, my hand's in the way. You get the idea. It's about time to put on the very first manual piece to the car. But first I want to make sure that all of these bolt holes are accessible. So we got these all coated, it's all dried up. And then there's usually a third point to mount to, and you can see it all the way on top there is that hole right there. So that one's good to go. Hopefully this all bolts up, no problem. I will admit I did try and swap out the brake pedal for the manual pedal that I ordered. But I think you have to pull out like the dash assembly, like all of this stuff. And I'm gonna admit, I'm not doing that. I'm just gonna cut the pedal. No way. I tried. Took all the sensors off, all the bolts. It's a pain. I put it all back on. If I ever have to pull a dash in the car, then I'll put the pedal on. Good stuff. The pedal's pretty neat.
That top bolt was a pain.
It's crazy that there's a bleeder on there. You know what? Should we have put that line on first? You have to connect it on the bottom of the master. That's pretty different.
You might be able to just put it up there and spin the line with your fingers.
Alright, so we've determined the crush washer banjo goes to the slave. I mean, you can just see the provisions here in the slave. It's got like a cutout for them. Plus the flares were different. So like this one was flat on the bottom, and then this one has a little indent, which will match the flare that's on the master cylinder. I know I didn't get a clip of it, but it is the same. It's crazy how short that line is too.
Dude, it's so short.
Can you even turn the wrench?
Probably not. Honestly, let's just take it back off.
Yeah, right?
Make it way easier.
Note to self, install the line before the master. That's crazy tight.
Ended up taking the vacuum hose from the brake booster to the intake manifold off for a little bit more room.
Such a tight fit.
Very.
that was a solid $200 mistake. I went ahead and purchased an OEM throw bearing because I don't know, we might as well. We're this deep, we're gonna put some good stuff in it, you know what I mean? I don't want to take the trans back out because of a noisy throw bearing. I guess I didn't even show what happened yet, and I'll show you back at the house. All right, back to work. It's really cool to see these cars next to each other. So I briefly mentioned how I made a mistake and that's why I broke something. So yesterday when I was trying to install the sleeve into the new throw bearing, I accidentally broke it. I was using this socket to try and, you know, center it and hit it down straight, but I think that's actually what ended up destroying it because it was pushing the edges outward. You can see how this socket is curved on the edge, therefore hammering it down would push out the sides. So definitely not going to do that again. I did start with using wood, but it just wasn't budging. I've used that wood method to install the throw bearing onto this RB25. Then I was thinking maybe it's just this bearing not being OEM, that the tolerances are different. I don't know. So I decided to just get an OEM throw bearing and then another one of these. I'm just so lucky they had this in stock. Apparently some 350Zs utilize this sleeve, so I lucked out. Which would mean this is also a 350Z throw bearing. Again, part numbers. And then I also picked up the drill bit and tap for the slave cylinder. I'm gonna move this thing out of here so we can have a workspace again. It's time to start drilling out the brand new transmission. That sounds really weird to say. I'm going to start with just drilling one hole in this point here. Then I'm going to install the slave cylinder, which we have right here. And once I have it secured, I'll mark the next center point on there because I don't really trust that this is perfectly centered. You know, we'll go based off of the slave cylinder itself. Luckily this is OEM, so I can trust the dimensions of this. And a lot of you guys have roasted me before for not having a cordless drill. Finally have a cordless drill, so you can stop roasting me. I did have to buy a drill bit. Funny enough, when I went into Home Depot to ask for one, I needed an 8.5mm drill bit. I don't know if I mentioned that before. Because when you tap a certain size, you need it to be a certain size drill bit. And they looked at me weird. They're like, there's no metric drill bits. And I was like, that's crazy. So I went to a different store and bought this kit. I already had the 1.5 tap, but this one came with the exact drill bit, so we're gonna use that. First thing I'm gonna do, wait, is someone mowing their grass? It's December. First thing we're gonna do is put a center punch right here, and then we'll start drilling it out. All right, looks like we have our center point made. We can drill it out now. Now we're gonna make some new threads here, and I found that you can use an 11/32 12-point socket as a driver for it. Just gotta make sure you go in perfectly straight. Yeah, I didn't drill my hole perfectly centered. Oh well, it'll still work. I'm gonna go ahead and slide this on so we can get a good test fit. That's where it's gonna sit. It's in the ball. The spring latched on. Oh, that's already lining up perfectly. Look at that. So I'm gonna put a center punch right there, and then we'll do the same thing. At this point, we're ready to assemble the rest of the accessories onto the transmission. I did successfully press in the sleeve to the OEM bearing. Now, something I found out is that the Z32 rear rotor is the perfect size to fit this bearing in. Absolutely perfect. It does not ride on the bearing, it just rides on the outside. And then I used a piece of wood on top and just hammered it down. It was perfect. Now we gotta put on the springs here and grease all this stuff up. Man, this is exciting. Oh, I gotta clean all this shavings. This is just white lithium grease. I'm just going to apply it where there's going to be metal to metal contact. This whole sleeve gets a little bit. We'll install this retaining spring onto the sleeve. Angled down like so. And then those hooks will slide into the fork here. There you go. It's ready to rock. Now let's slap on that sleeve. Now another strange thing about the brand new transmissions is that it does not come with a speed sensor. It comes with a little plug here for it. Now funny enough, when I RB swapped my 240, it didn't read right on the cluster because obviously this transmission was only available in Japan, so it's reading in kilometers. So I swapped it out with a Z32 sensor because those fit in there. And I kept the sensor because I was like, man, you know, maybe someday I'll have an R34 and I'll need a speed sensor. That was like 4 or 5 years ago. And here we are today, needing that speed sensor. Crazy. It's crazy how things come full circle. Alright, back under the car here. Still need to remove some stuff, like this auto trans fluid check. Looks like a couple zip ties are holding that on. I'm not sure if we need to pull out this pilot bushing. I know in the KA you have to. I brought down the manual one to see if that slides in. And alright, so it looks like we gotta go back to the store and get a puller so we can pull that bearing out. Cut these zip ties off. There we go. Another thing I'm not sure that will work is the auto inspection plate. Guess we'll figure that out. I gotta take off the flex plate first regardless. Wow, that's clean in there. You know, I was worried because I did forget to order a rear main seal, but this is spotless. Absolutely perfect. I'm not worried about that at all. Even the block still looks fresh. Damn. Still got zinc coating going on here. Oil pan, it's starting to seep. Still not bad enough to worry about. Overall, good condition. All right, I got the AutoZone rental tool. This is gonna pull out that pilot bushing that's within the crank right now. And if you guys remember, I used this before, probably around 2 years ago, when I had to pull the auto pilot bushing out of my KA on the Z. And what I've learned is that you have to actually grind down the teeth, I guess you can call it, on the ends here to make it sharper so it gets a better grab. So we got the angle grinder out and we're gonna modify the tool. All right, let's try that out. Now what we're trying to grab is this tiny ridge that's on the bushing. I don't know why they call it a bushing, it's really just a metal race. It's kind of hard to see on camera. It took me a while to figure this tool out the first time. You basically spin this top piece to open, like this spreads the grab, I guess, on the bushing itself. You want it to be nice and tight. Then you use this nut to pull the whole rod assembly out. It's a 19 millimeter. And it should just hopefully start coming out. Oh! We battled for this one. Yeah, victory.
I'm glad that worked that easy.
So as you guys saw, I was trying to use that AutoZone puller. That didn't actually work. It broke. Went back to AutoZone. I got a slide hammer style. This one didn't work either. I didn't even sharpen this one. I don't know. The teeth were just rounded off. This is kind of bulky. I don't know. Not ideal. Then Maddox suggested we go to Harbor Freight. Look at how they design their pieces. They fit perfectly. That came out first try. Highly recommend if you had to pull out one of these auto bushings or even just a pilot bushing in general, this is the move. I learned my lesson. Thanks for the suggestion.
Priceless tool. So like, I will.
There we go. 14 deep was the best socket to use to install that pilot bushing. Ooh. Speed sensor going in.
Use a little bit of the fluid.
Smart. Maddox brought some O-rings from his job. Slid one on there. Hopefully it fits.
I don't know if I just push it straight in.
Yeah, there you go.
I don't want to force it in there.
Try and spin the input shaft. Maybe it's grinding on the gear.
Ah.
Alright. Trans is ready. Now let's get the flywheel on and torqued. So we got the bolts ready for the flywheel, and I'm also assessing the bolts for the transmission. The bolts for the bell housing are different from auto to manual. So these were the auto bolts that we took off, and then these were the manual ones. Part number, part number. This one is slightly longer than the rest. The auto had a slightly longer bolt too. If I remember correctly, I'm pretty sure the longest bolt was the top center. This does measure the thickest out of every other point, so that kind of makes the most sense. Now, forgot we gotta spray down the flywheel because they usually ship it with grease. That's not good for friction. Swipe it down real quick. I'm gonna leave this yellow mark on here. We'll get to that later. Alright, let's line this up. I'm not gonna put Loctite on these just yet. I'm just gonna put a few in just to make sure it's on there. I'm also not sure if this inspection plate will clear the flywheel, so I want to make sure it does. I don't know if auto is different than manual. I'm just slowly tightening these down. Nothing too crazy, not to spec. I'm just trying to seat the flywheel first to the crank. Alright, seems like these are all pretty snug. So I'm going to try and just rotate it and see if it has clearance or if it's rubbing. Oh, we're golden. Yeah, we're gonna run this plate then. All right, so now what I'm gonna do is take one bolt out at a time and put Loctite on it. That's all you really need, nothing more than that. So we've determined the torque spec is around 120 foot-pounds. I'm gonna do it in a sequence. So I'm gonna do like 50 foot-pounds first all the way around, then I'll bump it up to like 80, and then I'll hit the final. We got Maddox in the front holding the crank in place. Alright, so that click is 50 pounds. So since that was the first pass, I'm going to put one dot on that bolt. I've already done these two bolts. I'm going to go to this one next. And since that one's at spec at 50, I'm going to put one dot. So I know I already hit it. Alright, now we're going to turn this thing up. So you lift up on this collar and just spin it. And then this will have the rating. Oh, there we go. Third and final pass. I'm going to turn it all the way up to 110. It was 110, right?
Yeah.
Alright. How are we holding up?
We're chilling now.
Now, since we did all three, what I like to do is put a line on the bolt and then extend it to the side. So now we know if this bolt rotated. It's just a good practice. This is what we would do at performance shops. This I did not learn in school. Sweet. Now you write yourself a little note. Just gonna write the date. I'm also going to write the sub count. It's been a common theme we've been doing. We're at 171K. If you're part of that 171, thank you. What we got? 444?
Lucky numbers.
Oh yeah. Lucky numbers, lucky car.
Good car.
Next we're going to throw on the clutch plate. This one's pretty cool. It's got felt on one side and some sort of ceramic on the other. Spec clutch is what I'm going to be using. This was in my RB13, which I liked. It says flywheel side on this side, so you can't mess it up. I'm gonna put this on here. You don't need to brake clean this thing off. Put the tool in there to hold it in place. Hopefully. Yep.
Clean.
Thank you, sir.
Your pizza?
Ooh, hot and ready. I did work at Little Caesars before.
Did you really?
Yeah. Remember that yellow dot we were talking about earlier? It's right here. Now we want to match that yellow dot with this yellow line on the pressure plate. That'll save you some time because it only fits one way. Slide this guy on. And then we're going to do the same thing that we did with the flywheel bolts. I'm not going to film it because you guys kind of get the point. Tighten it, you know, star pattern, even sequence, put the marker on it, yada yada. Now before you tighten down the pressure plate, it is so important that you make sure that your stick here, your alignment tool, goes in and out smoothly. If it doesn't go in or out smoothly, that's gonna determine how difficult it is to slide the trans on. Like, see, if you have this all the way down, because it still moves, it's really hard to pull out. But you could tighten this all down and, you know, kind of screw yourself. So It's just really good to think ahead right here. Try and center it. Now it's a little bit easier. Yeah, see, it slides in and out, no problem. Clutch is ready to go. You know what that means? Time to get some heavy lifting. So we're getting the manual transmission to go in, but I want to take off the bracket from the auto transmission first so I can compare them. For some reason, I thought that the auto was different. All the forums said they were different, but as we compare them, they honestly look identical. There's even the same A stamping here as the new one has too. This is a factory manual part too. I'm not sure if this rubber mount is the same, however. We're gonna try and line it up and see if at least these line up. If these line up, I feel like the mount is gonna be the same. However, we did notice these two bolts were on the bottom here, of course, that attached that rubber mount to the auto trans, and they threaded in. The manual transmission does not have threads. So it just goes right through and there's a whole bunch of play. Now, I remembered the Z32 had something similar to this, and I have a spare Z32 trans over here, and you can see that there's like a flat style stud, I guess. So I'm gonna steal these off of this trans because I looked up the part. Those are like $60 each, just for one stud, 60 bucks. Kind of crazy. Hopefully they're the same. I believe they would be though. Internally, the Z32 manual gearbox is the same as the RB25. That also makes me think maybe this is the correct mount. So maybe we'll just use this one for now until I get one brand new. Crusty. Yeah, look at that stud. And for anyone that's gonna do this swap, I'm gonna try and leave all of these part numbers in the description. Here's another side-by-side comparison. Pretty sure those are the same. And then we got the Z mount on top of the Auto R34 automatic mount. I think these are the same too. These holes line up perfectly. And so do the studs on the bottom. Guess I'll just use whichever one's in better condition for now. Even the height is the same. The Z mount does look more beefy. The rubber on it is significantly thicker than the R34 Auto. Plus this one feels lighter, even though it's bigger. That's kind of funny. Being kickflip on the RB25 trans.
Try hook. Trans doesn't got good pop though. There we go.
Alright, so I ended up using the old Auto trans cross member bracket with the Z32 manual trans bracket. Well, that was a mouthful. I couldn't find anything online when I googled it, so hopefully this helps someone out with parts compatibility. Also, the way that you know how this goes on the transmission is there's an arrow right there in the center that goes forward. So that's just good to keep in mind because once you put this mount on, it blocks that arrow. So it goes on like this. Now we can put our studs in. I did try and clean them up a little bit. Next step, trans install officially. It's going in. This is gonna be the hardest part, I feel like.
That heavy girl.
Yeah, she's big.
Come to Papa.
We gotta rotate it and then try and get the jack under it.
You good?
Right there should be good. Let's start going up. Ladies and gentlemen, the R34 is officially manual. Yeah, check it out. We got the transmission mounted in here. It was impossible to film, you know, muscling a transmission in. You guys understand. Just put the bolts in where they go. Luckily it all lined up, no problem. And another thing, if you guys are in this position, we ended up having to lower the subframe, which is still lowered. I need to raise it back up. So all I did was loosen up these bolts and it lowered the entire engine about ½ an inch. Basically what was happening is the transmission was hitting the trans tunnel, so there wasn't enough clearance to even push it onto the engine side. Once we lowered it down, we were able to get it a lot closer and it ended up working. Now a couple things we have left. I need to figure out the wiring, so I've got to look up some diagrams. There's no forum information for this car. I can't find any information about the 20 Neo and what these plugs are, what the wire colors mean, how it can translate to this new trans. I'll figure it out, but I need to do some research on that still. Another thing I need to do is loop these trans lines. So I gotta take these off completely, and then I gotta take this out too. This was holding the crankshaft. But this is one of the trans lines here on the bottom of the radiator. And I'll just loop it to this port here. That way it's not just dripping out if I cut them off, you know. Another thing we can do is attach the clutch line. I forgot about that. So we can tighten these fittings up and then maybe even bleed the clutch if we're feeling up to it. And we're gonna need to order the other side of this connector because the automatic harness does not have that. This is the speed sensor, by the way. But yeah, we're looking pretty good. All the bell housing bolts lined up, no problem. To my surprise, the inspection plate fit, no problem, on the bottom and the top. And then these brackets, I guess you call them the braces, were the same too. You know, I tried to order those for a manual, but they were discontinued. So I was like, oh, I'll just see if these work. And they did, so that's good to know. But this is different because it's not threaded on the trans side, so you just need to put a nut and bolt. So I'll find one of those eventually, nothing too crazy. Another thing is, if you're gonna order transmission bolts, you only need 3 of the small ones and 1 of the long ones. The long one was the top one, as we mentioned before. But yeah, good progress was made. Now that the trans is in, I'm gonna order a drive shaft from our local driveline supplier. Bueno. And looks like an 8mm for the bleeder.
Yep, 8mm. We'll put fluid in it, crack that. I wonder how that top bleeder works.
And even this is tight to get to. Fill her up. Oh man, I hope I don't spill. Spilling. We'll let that gravity bleed for like maybe a minute or two. And then we'll close the bleeder up and bleed this clutch out. And there she drips. Hold. To my surprise, we were actually able to receive this custom drive shaft in about 3 days. I submitted a few measurements and the shop was able to ship it out same day. I used a company called Shaft Masters out in Michigan. They were very familiar with the RB25 transmission as well as the R200 differential. So they knew what they were doing and they got this done really quick. Ooh. I kind of want to slap a sticker on here though. I always try and make it a point to support core companies, especially the companies that help support my hobbies. This is an OG skate brand that's still around. And we do have more of these on the site as well. Now when you order a custom drive shaft, there's a couple pieces of information they're going to need. Not all driveline shops are going to be familiar with the RB25 transmission, so they're going to ask for a tooth count, which is how many teeth are on that piece right there, and there's 30. The next thing they're going to need to know is what this flange looks like back here. Whether it's male, female, how many bolts, and then the spacing between the bolts. And lastly, one of the most important pieces is the length. So you measure from the very edge of the seal here, this rubber seal that's on the back of the transmission, all the way to the very edge of this flange. And in our case, it was 51.5 inches. It's also important to note that this is an ABS diff. You can tell because there's a center here, which means the nose or the front of it is longer. I'm pretty sure this is the same exact diff as an S14 ABS diff. It's open, unfortunately. We'll make it an LSD down the line, but one thing at a time. Now, when you install a drive shaft, you always want to put in the slip yoke first. I guess we can finally pull out this rear end plug. Whew. Something I forgot to mention is that the drive shaft shop that I got this from had enough experience with this transmission that they knew this dust shield wasn't going to work and told me to beat it off with a rubber mallet. And it came right off, so yeah. Cool that they knew that information. Now when you're putting in these bolts to the diff, the head always faces towards the front. I like to call that a leading style bolt. The drive shaft is looking sweet. The next thing we gotta do is figure out the wiring. I'm gonna have to convert this automatic transmission harness to fit the manual. I'm not sure what plug does what, and there's almost no information on it. I can't find a wiring diagram for the life of me for this thing. Now I was, however, able to find these connectors on Wiring Specialties for the manual trans, that is. So I have 3 connectors on the way. Speed sensor, reverse sensor, neutral safety switch. Now I actually called and spoke to Wiring Specialties, and they told me that there's one specific harness in the engine bay that I should convert. It'll be a lot easier. So as we look near the fuse box here, a little further down, there is a harness that goes towards the front near the headlight. And it's right here. So something about this harness needs to be converted. Apparently you only need 3 of these wires connected. This harness is in charge of the neutral safety switch along with the reverse lights. I'm gonna have to sit here and figure it out, and I'll show you guys what I come up with. All right, so I got the connector off. This is the male side. And this is the screenshot that I got from Wiring Specialties, and I went ahead and labeled them on the phone. So you can see the top right 2 pins are for the neutral safety. You basically just jump those, so it's 12 volts all the time. And then the top left wire is going to be the reverse wire. I'm not sure how the ground is going to work for the reverse, so I might still have to figure that out. But at least we know some first steps we can do here. I might just jump these top 2 with a T-pin so I can at least test it before I make some permanent modifications. So that would mean the wire colors in my case would be red for the reverse, and then a gray wire, and then a black wire for the neutral safety. And then apparently they said the rest of these are for the Prindle location for the auto trans, so none of the other wires really matter on this sub harness. This sub harness is built into the chassis and engine harness, so it's not like it can be separated either. So it's not really something you can take out. I did some diagnosing, I verified some wire colors. I'll go over that in a second. But we don't have a shifter in the car yet. So if I even want to try and start the car, I need to make sure it's not in gear. So I need to steal that off of my 240. Luckily we have the same exact trans in here. The new shifter has not arrived yet, so I'll just use this one for now. I also went ahead and threw on the exhaust back on the car, as well as swap out the jack stands and wheels. You know, it's funny, I only have 3 jack stands. I thought I had 4. I only have 3. I had the car on wheels in the rear, but I switched them around so that I can put the car in gear and make sure that the speedometer actually works. So let's see what we need to take this thing off. Hello, 240. Man, it feels so good to be sitting in this car. There should just be one snap ring to pull out. Got my snap ring pliers here. I put a glove around that area so no dust gets in there. Now let's see how this fits into this transmission. I did order a snap ring, but now that I'm looking at it, I don't know if this is the right one. Oh yeah, it is. Never mind. We'll be good. I'm not sure if that snap ring comes with the shifter. Same with that plastic piece. Guess we'll see when it shows up. I did order brand new shift bushings, but this one still looks like it's in good shape and I'm not feeling any play. Probably just gonna leave that on there. Something I did order is actually on the parts list. Well, it was on the parts list here. It got shaved off. It's like down here. But it was a shift boot, which is actually this piece right here. You can see this is torn. So when it would get extremely hot on the track, it would start to steam up into the cabin. Not exactly ideal, because then it just smells like trans fluid in the car. I guess that's just the classic 90s Nissan smell. So let's replace that before we slap it in this car. Here's the part number for the boot, still available new. It's strange to me to see a forward position. You wouldn't think that there'd be a front or back to this, but I guess it does angle back slightly. What the heck? How do they do this? Do you think they go down from the top? This seems almost bigger. I don't know. I put on a little bit of soap and water, and it actually slid down no problem. Now we're in the R34, and I still don't know what this cable's for. That kind of rhymed. Pretty sure that when you install the shifter, see how there's a slight bend to it? Pretty sure it's supposed to angle back, especially based on that bushing there. So we're trying to align this little plastic cup into that hole all the way inside the trans. It's usually pretty easy to just slide in there. There's 2 grooves on the side of the shifter as well that we have to match up. It was starting to feel like I had to force the shifter down, and it really wasn't seating properly, so I decided to pull out those new bushings for the shifter and compare them. And it looks like they're actually significantly smaller. I'm hoping the ball cup is still the same so I can utilize it still. That makes me wonder what is different between these 2 transmissions, because on the outside they look the same. Maybe it's like early style and late style and they updated things. I don't know. Got the old bushing off. Look at the difference here. I'm gonna take a few measurements just so we have them on reference. It looks like the bushing we need is just over 15 millimeters in diameter. The old one is just under 20. Maybe it was supposed to be 20. That's a pretty significant difference. I'm hoping this one fits the shifter. It looks like it will though. I'm gonna put some grease on it and just pop it on. All right, I got the new bushing on, and you can see that there's some lateral play, just a little bit. I don't know if you can see that or not, but side to side, I'm not feeling any play, which I think will be fine because, you know, when you're shifting, it's, you know, that's all the play that really matters. Up and down doesn't really make a difference. I gotta be honest, it's pretty fun finding out all these minute differences. I couldn't find much information online when I was looking into doing this swap, so I'm really just hoping by doing all this helps someone out, especially because now these Skylines are legal to import, so it's gonna be a lot more of these coming in. Oh, that slid right in. Okay, I'm gonna put the snap ring on and try and shift through the gears. Alright, let's see if this shifts. Oh, it's pretty notchy. You know, I guess it does have 0 miles on it, so I'm sure all the gears and synchros still need to be broken in. I do plan to change this fluid pretty early on. I've heard of people having issues where the brand new trans will blow up, and I personally think that's because, you know, it's brand new. It needs to get all the grit and grime out of it from being so fresh. But either way, I'm gonna try and take it easy the first few 1,000 miles or so. But now that the shifter's in, I want to actually hook up the battery and then try and just start it. I'm gonna plug in that connector that I unplugged. I'm gonna try and start it, which it shouldn't start. So then I'm going to try and jump those pins and figure out all of that wiring. Before I make permanent adjustments to the wiring, I want to jump them just to make sure that they're correct. It can get real confusing once you cut off the connector and just play the guessing game. Let's plug this guy back in down here. Rehook up our tiny terminal battery. Oh, this is a new feeling. Neutral check getting into this thing. Ignition on. Nothing. We've confirmed we need to jump the neutral safety switch. You remember that one gray connector on top I said we were going to be utilizing? Well, I ended up chasing those wire colors all the way down here and verifying continuity. So I have this black connector that was attached to the transmission, actually, yeah, that rear plug on the trans. And these all correlate with the same pins on top. So this red one is for the reverse, and then these two gray and the one black are going to be the neutral safety, which we need to jump. So I'm gonna put a jumper harness inside of here and just see if it starts up. All right, harness has been jumped here. Let's go check it. All right, that is sensor 1 out of 3. Next I want to do the speedo. And it looks like we have a check engine light. I'm not even sure how to check that. It's probably because there's no auto trans in it. All right, let me explain my wiring here. We have the jumper harness right here, so that's all that is. Now this is the speed sensor, and I have it back probed right now to these two T-pins, and they're jumped to these two wires. We actually broke this connector while removing the transmission. Funny enough, it was the speed sensor connector. It doesn't matter because they're different anyways, it wouldn't have worked. But I have these pressed into these pins, and we'll start it up and see if it works. I don't have the neutral safety switch connectors or the reverse light connector, so I'm gonna have to wait to test these out later. And I'm still not sure what that is for. Alright, let's go into third. Oh, speedo works. Are the wheels spinning?
They're spinning all right.
All right, good. I think
Looks like you're doing about 40 kms right now. Not a little lower.
Hell yeah. Dude, that's exciting. Wow. It actually shifts pretty good. Oh, we gotta test drive this. I don't know how I'm gonna hook up those wires though, because I don't have the connectors. Oh. Guess we don't need that plug anymore. That was for this auto button. Oh no. Man. Might have to trim this. That's alright. We'll get there eventually. Unless I can take this trim off. No, it still hits. Put the shifter on. Oh, I'm not used to using the e-brake in this car. Oh, we're moving. I'm so excited to be driving the R34 manual. A manual swap has got to be one of my favorite mods, other than wheels and coils, of course, because you're actually driving the car. Makes you feel a lot more connected to the driving experience. I'm going to try my best to remember everything I ordered so I can leave a nice parts list with the part numbers so that you guys can order these parts if you're in the same predicament. And I want to thank you guys for some of your suggestions along the way. Like, already I realized I have the wrong shifter. Apparently the shifter I took out of my S13 was an R33 shifter, so I had to order a dual bend for the R34. Little stuff like that, I really appreciate it. But I hope you guys have a Merry Christmas and Happy Holidays. Thank you guys so much for sticking around for yet another video. See you guys in the next one.
Peace.